everybody's ready, we might as well do it. Get excited and warmed up, and here we go.
Not sure.
Yeah, put that away. It's my pointer.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. What a beautiful day. Photons are hitting our solar arrays and turbines are turning, so we couldn't want for a better day than today. Thank you for coming together and discussing and learning about such an important topic as climate change, the solutions that are within our reach, and some of the milestones achieved by PCC to date that make us so immensely proud. More than any other time in our history, climate change and sustainability is a topic of immense interest. It is a topic that commands attention from the highest levels of government, as well as providing a groundswell of public opinion from the grassroots level. Dialogues about our Earth run the range from the technical and scientific to that of national and international policy. It's one of the few agenda items that transcend international boundaries and remind us that we are of one Earth, and our future is in the hands of the global population. We are of an age when we can look back and see the tremendous evolution that has resulted from our awareness, education, and action on sustainability. For example, I recall growing up in a house where we had coal fires, leaded gas in the cars, and even lead pipes in our house. What we have accomplished over the last half century has been remarkable. What we need to accomplish over the next half century is challenging. Yet we should not be afraid of these challenges. We should not dismiss these challenges and in doing so hand them over to the next generation. There are solutions, and through perseverance and dedication, environmental advocates are discovering them, creating them. As an educational institution, PCC has a responsibility to raise awareness through education and experiences. As such, I'm immensely proud of our position in this discussion, because PCC really has assumed a leadership role on this issue. We are not content to sit back and let others carry the flag. We have determined that it is within our capabilities to make a difference ourselves, and in doing so, provide a platform for future generations to continue this charge. As part of our mission as a community college, we not only educate inside the classroom, but also train through experiences outside of the classroom and provide opportunities for practice and application of theoretical principles. Our commitment to sustainability is no different. The only major divergence is that those being educated are not just our students, but also our faculty, our staff, and our community, both internal and external. Let me give you some examples of our efforts and successes to date. Some of this material will be covered later in more detail in these proceedings. In May 2013, PCC Sustainability Council celebrated the signing of the 2013 Climate Action Plan, which was originally signed in 2009. Amongst the Climate Action Plan's goals is to get the college below greenhouse gas levels measured during the 2006 inventory. By 2030, PCC is targeting to be 40% below 2006 greenhouse gas levels and 80% below by the year 2050. I believe also that PCC is the only community college in the country that is tracking greenhouse gas emissions related to the supply chain for all of its suppliers and for its purchases. Portland has also been tapped by the United Nations University as a regional center of excellence, only one of 3 in the United States. In this capacity, Portland collaborators are striving to address sustainable development through goals set by the UN, as well as sustainability goals in our region. The Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network is growing a web of regional educators, students, nonprofits, political and industry leaders, and community members to promote the advancement of sustainability education. One of PCC's faculty, Kim Smith, is the coordinator of this local effort. So we are accomplishing these notable advances by a combination of dedication and hard work from our talented faculty and staff, some of whom are here today. One such example is Toby Dietrich, a longtime faculty member in physics. Toby has an amazing repertoire of skills and experiences, from being obviously a scientist, an inventor, an Alaskan explorer, and much, much more. Of course, as a physicist myself, I realize that it is part of the psyche of being a physicist that one is naturally curious to understand and apply the fundamentals. In 2009, Toby launched an online course, Global Climate Change, a course for the layperson to understand climate change and its ripple effect. Therefore, it gives me great pleasure today to introduce Toby to you as one of PCC's first and most enduring leaders in the area of sustainability. Toby.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brown. I'm proud to be a physics teacher at the best community college in the United States, Portland Community College, and welcome everyone, no matter where you are, watching on the stream. I have been involved in scientific research on the Juneau ice field for about 40 years. We've studied the effects of climate change on the ice field, and I feel that as a scientist I have a moral responsibility to organize information for the public and to create action towards a solution for climate change. That's what we're here today. We're going to have a very fun discussion, and the goal of this discussion is to get you to act on climate change. There will be a lot of places watching today, and so I'd like to welcome everyone around the community of Oregon and elsewhere to this. We have a website, www.pcc.edu, where you can go to that website and see the 2013 lecture here, and you'll be able to also see a recorded version of this lecture here. And also, for any teachers in the audience, we have a global climate change curriculum, extensive 30 hours of PDUs for teacher education, available soon on this website, the PCC website. We have a special guest today. Since Dr. Brown had to leave to go to Salem to do some important business, we have a very special guest today, our famous panther, Poppy the Panther. So I'd like you to welcome our special guest, Poppy. You can take over for Dr. Brown as president right now. Now, Poppy, are you concerned about climate change? Do you like it? You like climate change? I don't think you would. You're an animal, and you have to protect the environment of your animal. And here's a picture of your cousin, the panther in Florida. Isn't he beautiful? You probably have met him before. Well, you know what? His range in Florida is considerable, and it's a real success story in Florida for the panthers. In 1970, there was 20 panthers in existence in Florida, and now, today, there's 160, a tremendous growth in the number of panthers, and you can see clearly in the green here, the range of the Florida panther is from the very southern tip all the way up into the midsection of Florida. But the range of your buddies in Florida are threatened by climate change. On the right, you'll see a picture of Florida and with the colors, and those colors indicate what would be flooded as sea level rises. The red is about 3 meters, the yellow 5 meters. And so the most modest prediction for sea level rise by 2100 is 1 meter, but it can range as much as 3 to 5. So by 2100, there is a very good possibility that the whole southern tip of Florida will be deluged by sea. And of course, that would be disastrous for your friends in Florida. So I think this is one example of the reason why we must talk and try to find a solution for this. And by talking very smartly and very effectively, logically, and continuously, we can communicate effectively. And if we have effective communication, that's education. And by having an educated populace, we can all begin to act. So that's what you want, isn't it, Poppy? Well, you can just hang out here, and we'll need you every now and then to encourage the audience, but we'll we have a little sign for you, and when we ask a question like, can we save the Florida Panthers? Yes, we can. Okay, Poppy, thank you for coming, and thank you for being a helpful element of our talk today. Today we're going to be featuring a lot of successes and some failures, but we're going to try to emphasize the call to action for solutions. Recently, we've had a report issued by the famous scientist Dr. Mario Molina from Mexico. He won the Nobel Prize for discovery of the ozone layer and initiating change in the world that was a very positive result, a positive effect on the planet, reducing considerably the size of the ozone hole over Antarctica. And this report is shown in a link, both a link for his work and the history of Mario, but also the link called What We Know. And this is a link that you might want to go to further learn about climate change. You can see on this link what we know. You can see the facts. There's a nice little video there that pops up when you first open this up. You can hear from the scientists. And the message that is told, you can see the facts. And when you see the facts, some of these things that Dr. Molino has discovered, it comes down to 4 important points. The first point is that climate scientists agree. Climate change is happening here and now. The second point is we are risking the risk of pushing our climate system towards an abrupt and unpredictable and potentially irreversible changes with high damaging impacts. Third, the sooner we act, the lower the risk and cost, and there is so much we can do. By making informed choices now, we can reduce risks for future generations and ourselves and help communities adapt to climate change. People have responded successfully to other major environmental challenges, such as acid rain and the ozone hole, with benefits greater than the costs. And scientists working with economists believe there are many ways to manage the risks of climate change while balancing current and future economic prosperity. That's what Dr. Molina's extensive study has shown. And we hope that, that you will have a chance to go to that study yourself and look at the many things associated with it. Another study is, and the conclusion of this study is that we need immediate action towards a solution. Another study recently came out, which is the IPCC report. They have issued 4 reports, IPCC 1 through 4, and the IPCC 5 is scheduled to be issued in October of this year. But there's been 3 sub-reports issued recently, and the last report just recently came out, and if you click on your link here sometime on your own home computer, you'll see that this report is right here, and it contains a considerable amount of information. You can scan through that, and you can see that there's, for example, a summary for policymakers. And the summary for policymakers is this long document here. It's about 25 pages long. It's full of impacts due to climate change. In other words, what I kind of say is that the first 20 pages boil down to we are screwed. And the last 5 pages are dedicated to a call to action and the things that we can do for action. This is an example of the fact that we need to focus our efforts on action towards a solution rather than the problems that we may encounter as a result of climate change. So that's why we have today this lecture calling for action towards solutions. But these reports all emphasize that what we need to do is begin work towards a solution. Climate disruption is real. Humans have caused it. The debate is over. Let's get on with the fact that we need and can do things towards a solution. This climate change problem has been caused by billions of people, 7 billion people, inadvertently looking for economic stability, a better life, easier transportation, warm homes, so on. And as a result of this, billions of people around the world creating greenhouse gases to pollute our atmosphere, we have found that this population is rapidly increasing. You can see here that as we speak, this population is going up, 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 and he said, wow, it's going wild, the population of the earth. The two largest countries in population, of course, are China and India, and the third is the United States. China with almost 1.4 billion, India 1.3 billion, the United States 322 million. But this number is going up, up, up. It's growing now at about a 1.3% rate per year, and so people are popping up all over the place. And here is an interactive graph of the world population through time, and you can see that it is skyrocketing up to the present of 7 billion people in the present, and the prediction is that by July 1st, 2100, the population of the world will be 11 billion people. 7 billion today, 11 billion in 2100. 7 come 11. Doesn't that sound kind of like gambling? It is gambling. It's gambling with the future of the world. We've got to focus on climate change, on population growth and the effect that population growth has on climate change. There has been efforts in India and China to help this world population problem. In China, of course, the population is rising rapidly in spite of the fact that they've outlawed having 2 children, only 1 child, which has created a major problem where they have children that have no names, and so when they go to get a passport, they don't have any names. India, on the other hand, has a program called, it's called Hum Do Humari Do, which means 2 of us, 2 of our own. And that is a voluntary program to limit families to having 2 children, which is only of slight success. On Earth Day today, we might also remember that there is a program in India today called Poo to Loo. And you might guess what that means. It means use the bathroom. And they are trying to create bathrooms across the rural areas of the country so that that this pollution problem isn't as serious as it is today. But both countries are still growing in population. And if you look at the population dilemma here, this happens to be an analogy I put in. This is a Ford Mustang GT Super Hemi kind of arrangement here, the drivetrain. And let's just imagine that climate changes the wheels of this Ford Mustang, and the engine is the population growth. And for now, let's think that the transmission is the global energy crisis. Now, if you had a car and it didn't go, the wheels would not turn, would you rebuild the engine or the transmission knowing that the engine was blown? That would be a ridiculous thing to do. You'd have to rebuild both the engine and the transmission to have any effect on the wheels and make them go. Well, I'll tell you, these wheels are going pretty strongly right now. In fact, the CO2 that's coming out of the exhaust pipe of our little analogy here is so large that at every 3 minutes, the weight of the CO2 we're emitting in the world is equivalent to the weight of the largest ocean liner in the world. Every 3 minutes. So we got to put a stop to this, and to do that, we're going to have to solve population growth. I have no immediate answers. The only thing I can suggest is that we talk, we communicate, we educate, and we act. And maybe a solution for population growth will come from that. What makes this problem so bad, to steal the words from my famous friend, the late Al Bartlett at the University of Colorado, is that there's many ways to make the problem worse, such as immigration, medicine, public health, sanitation. These things are apple pie and motherhood. There's peace, law and order, scientific agriculture. We all want that, but they all make population growth worse. The 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. How about Obamacare? That makes the population problem worse. But on the other hand, there's ways to solve the problem. Abstention, contraception, abortion. These might not be all that popular. Small families. Difficult to achieve. Stop immigration. Disease. Anyone like disease? How about promoting Ebola virus? War, murder, famine. Everything that's negative seems to be something that would help. So this creates the monstrous problem we call world population, smoking, and so on. I robbed this from, of course, the late Professor Al Bartlett, and he has his world-famous YouTube with 5 million hits on it. I encourage you to go see. But the point is, we need to talk, communicate, educate, and act in order to find a solution to this, because I ask you, is there a relationship between energy and population? This over here is population in millions. Over here is energy use in the world in exajoules. Energy use is red, population is blue. Do you think there's a relationship between energy use and population? I would imagine so. I think any college student in my physics class would agree, I would hope. And this is the problem, the global energy crisis. The exponential growth in energy throughout the 20th century, and 80% of our energy comes from the fossil fuels. That is the energy problem in a nutshell. And those fossil fuels are creating the engine for carbon dioxide emission. You can see that the total amount of carbon dioxide emitted is going up drastically, including petroleum, coal, and natural gas. Of course, natural gas is better than petroleum and coal, but petroleum and coal globally are about equal. And so we need to attack both petroleum and coal in order to have any effect on the rapidly raising emissions of carbon dioxide in the world. where do we get these emissions? Where do they come from? These are a series of pie charts, and we have to attack these pie charts. Some might call it a war on carbon dioxide. And to me, the important thing to note is that the pie charts have large segments: electricity and heat, 46%, transportation, 23%, and industry, 20%. So we should focus on every source, but particularly we need to focus on the large ones, in particular the creation of electricity, mostly from coal, and the heating buildings. And by attacking the largest portions, we can have the most effective, immediate reduction in carbon dioxide globally. Fortunately, there are about 1,000 to 1,200 large-scale sources of carbon dioxide in the world, predominantly creating electricity for people. And that attributes to half of those 1,200 sources attribute about half of the carbon dioxide in the world. So it would be possible to focus on these old, aging coal plants. And as they come to the end of their life, instead of extending their life, we can perhaps transfer their energy sources into new green energy sources that we'll be discussing throughout this program. Again, power stations, industrial processes, and transportation fuels create the major section of greenhouse gases as well. What about China? Guess which source is red? Coal. And people wonder, will there ever be clean coal? But another point of China is that China's doubling their energy use every 8 years. Here in 2004, it was about 1.5, and in 2012, it's about 3. So about every 8 years, the energy use in China has been doubling. And this is a problem because, as you can see, most of the gain is through the use of coal. Here in Oregon, we have some dilemmas ourselves. A large amount of carbon dioxide from sources in transportation, and we have the Boardman coal plant that's scheduled to be closed, and I'm sure we'll be discussing the Boardman plant more thoroughly. But one of our speakers, Bill Bradbury, was involved in the 1995 Oregon Climate Action Plan to reduce carbon dioxide emissions in Oregon by 10% below 1990 levels by 2010. But as you can see, the levels of carbon dioxide in Oregon have not gone down at all in the last 20 years. This is good that they have not gone up. This is bad that they have not gone down. So what we might have to do, in my opinion, is rethink the goals for Oregon, create new goals and an effective way to achieve that. So this is directly from the Oregon report, governmental report, and it's some bad news. But we also have a lot of good news coming in this discussion today, but we need to focus on the bad news as well as the good. Again, the world energy demand is the problem, and it is such a serious problem because, as Albert Bartlett pointed out in the 1970s, that the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. It is math, but it's not that complicated. Here is the world energy use plot from 1900 to 2000 in the black. This conforms perfectly with exponential growth at a rate historically of 3.6%. The question is, as we go from 2000 to 2020, what percentage growth rate should we have in world energy demand? And the fact is that what we've seen up until 2010 was that it has grown at a lower rate than 3.6, about 3.2, but I've drawn 3.6 here. So you can see that this area would be the amount of energy used between the period 2000 and 2020. And this is exponential growth, and there's a problem with exponential growth. And that problem is that if we used 1 unit of energy in the year 1900, we have a doubling time of 20 years. So we'd use 2 in 1920 for a total of 3, 4 in 1940 for a total of 7, 8 in 1960 for a total of 15, 16 in 1980 for a total of 31, and 32 in the year 2000 for a total of 63. How much would we use between the period 2000 and 2020? 64. More area, more energy in this 20-year period than in all the history of time. That is Al Bartlett's forgotten fundamental of the energy crisis. That we are on track, the world is on track to use between 2000 and 2020 more energy than the amount of energy the world has used in the entire history of the world. This is an immense problem. It is the result of exponential growth, which is disaster. This is evident here with this ever-climbing world energy demand. This is the problem. This is the target for our efforts. We have many studies about the future of fossil fuels, and you can go to the web and find these. The present on this study is right about here. We have a series of studies. Present on this study is right about here. Present on this study is right about here. Present on this study is right about here. Here's another study, and the present is right about here. So it doesn't really matter where we are exactly. The fact of the matter is that soon fossil fuels production will decrease. And it doesn't matter whether it's in 10 years or 50 years. It's going to happen. Coal is even questioned as to whether we've reached peak coal. At the Boulder, Colorado newspaper and an environmental organization in Colorado issued this report questioning whether we have reached peak coal in the United States, because since 2008, coal production in the United States has declined. It doesn't matter whether we are at peak coal or peak oil. Someday we'll have to get off our addiction to burning fossil fuels and transition into a sustainable energy future. This is just a visionary graph of population stabilizing around 7 billion people. The UN believes we can stabilize around 2100 to about 10 billion people. That'll be what they predict. But you can see that this total energy demand must go down because coal, oil, and natural gas all decrease to a very 50% factor in the year 2100. And that what's taken up is by renewable energy sources, wind and solar, and continued use of nuclear power in the red to make up the difference with a stabilized and sustainable energy future for the world. This is what we want. This is what we must have. We must declare war on carbon. And in fact, Richard Branson is so excited about this concept of declaring war on carbon that he has created a carbon war room. And you can go to this link on this PowerPoint, and you can see that he has a carbon war room set up, and it's a very nice website that has all kinds of news about renewable jet fuels. So whether you're a citizen, an entrepreneur, an investor, or with industry, you can join the conversation and participate in Richard Branson's Carbon War Room. Join the fight. Let's join the world. This is going to be the defining challenge of the 21st century, is the carbon war and the creation of a sustainable energy future. I was born in 1946, and I'm a war baby. And throughout my life, you might characterize the past century as the century of war. We grew up with nuclear threats in the Cold War, most of which has been taken care of and alleviated to the most part. For example, if you look at the number of nuclear weapons in the world, it peaked around 1970 with 75,000 nuclear weapons in the world, and today we have less than 7,000, a 90% reduction in the nuclear weapons of the world. So what I'm saying is that the last century, the century that I lived in, might be called the century of war, but what we need in the next century is a century of sustainable energy creation and elimination of the dominance of fossil fuels. I plotted up the world energy use from 1960 carefully to the year 2020 along this line here, and it does look like it's curving down. These X's up here are projections from the Institute of Energy Analysis in the U.S. Department of Energy that continues the idea that we're going to continue to go up, up, up with energy use endlessly. But I believe here we are at the crossroads, and we have the opportunity now to continue on a path towards sustainability rather than continue on a path of ever-increasing exponential growth in energy. That is the challenge that the young children, the millennials of this age, have before them in their life, is to create a sustainable energy future, and that is what's going to dominate this century. Can we do it? Yes, we can. I believe we can if we talk, communicate, educate, and act. That is the goal, and we can sustain the earth. How are we going to do this? We're going to do this by educating the masses. And how do we educate the masses? One by one. If the 100 people in this room went out this week and convinced one other person, each of us convinced one other person to act on climate change, and then they convinced one other person the next week, it would go 1, 2, 4, 8, and so on. I mean, 100, 200, 400, 800, and so on. How long do you think it would take before we had 7 billion people in this world acting on climate change? This is the miracle of exponential growth. It would take 6 months. So next year we could come back here and there would be 7 billion members in the Army on the war against carbon. That's the goal today. And in order to teach people individually, one by one, how to act and achieve a solution to the carbon war, we have our first additional speaker from the Northwest Energy Institute, Lacey Kegel, who is going to talk to us today about the curriculum that they have to convert your life and your efforts towards a green future. So let's welcome Lacey to the stage. Thank you, Lacey, for coming.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm from the Northwest Earth Institute. In 2006, probably most of you have seen, there was a documentary that came out that Al Gore was involved with called An Inconvenient Truth. And he did such a great job in that film of translating climate science into something that ordinary people could understand. So many of the people I know who are ordinary citizens who are doing something to act to make the world more sustainable, to act to have a war on carbon, as Toby has put it, were inspired by that film. I was inspired by that film. But at the end, after he's presented all this data, like Toby's done today, he ended by asking people to change a light bulb. And when you're talking about climate change, when you're talking about greenhouse gas emissions, feedback loops, when you're presented all of the data like we were presented today, and you're asked to change a light bulb, it feels like a really pathetic response. It doesn't feel like you're actually really acting on the issue. And lots of people were really critical of that, that they had gotten so much information and felt so overwhelmed, and then they were told to change a light bulb. But the thing is that if you want to act on climate, if you want to act to make the world a more sustainable place, you have to start somewhere. It has to be actionable. And changing a light bulb might be a tiny step, but it's a first step, which means that it gets you to the second step, and then you can go to the third step. So changing a light bulb might be something that actually can be a revolutionary act to change the world if you keep going. At Northwest Earth Institute, we're helping people take that first step. That's really what we're trying to do. The Northwest Earth Institute was founded 20 years ago in Portland, and our mission is inspiring people to take responsibility for Earth. We do that in two main ways. One is our discussion courses, which are designed to be self-facilitated in small groups. And another program that we do that through is called the Eco Challenge, which is an annual program, 2 weeks where people can choose one action that they would like to change in their own lives that's better for them and better for the planet. Both of these programs have different starting places, but they're both centered around this idea of transformative learning. And I really like how Toby's lineup of talk, communicate, educate, and act. That's really a lot like what we're trying to do with our programs. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about our discussion courses and how they go toward individual action, but the Eco Challenge also is a really great example of that, and I would encourage you to look that up if you're interested in participating. So both of these programs have several key components. One is that they're social. They let people connect with each other. The second is that they're reflective. People learn together and they share that learning with each other, and they think about it for themselves as well. And the third is that they're action-oriented. Transformative learning, if you're not familiar with it, is an idea that true education is so much more than just acquiring more knowledge. That we can find all of this information, we can get all the statistics, we can see all the graphs, but true education is more than that. And transformative learning helps people to recognize the assumptions that they have about the way they view the world and their place in it. And so one, recognizing it, a lot of times we have these assumptions that are completely invisible to us. And transformative learning helps you bring that up, helps you think about, oh, I have this idea that I should be able to drive my car whenever and wherever I want to. Oh, maybe that's connected to this American value of individualism or mobility. And those are assumptions that we're operating on every day, but a lot of times we don't realize that those are the assumptions we're operating on. So transformative learning helps us recognize those assumptions and then transform them. See if it's something we actually want to value. See if that's something that we actually want to build our actions on. And then change that into something that we would want to build our actions on. So the discussion courses that we facilitate, or that we offer through the Northwest Earth Institute, helps people to break those things down into small pieces. So if you're looking at climate change, if you're looking at consumption, if you're looking at our food system, you can see the underlying assumptions about the systems that we've created in the world, and then work to make positive change in those systems. Individual action is good. It's important. It's important to feel empowered. It's important to feel inspired. But if you stop there, then it doesn't really make that much difference. If you're going to get to the 7 billion people being educated about climate and taking action, you can't just stop at walking to school every day. You have to talk about it. You have to engage with other people. You have to have a network of people who are supporting you. And that's really how change happens. Behavior change is a very social process. If you can normalize something in your own life and in your own community, more people are going to be willing to do that. A good example of this is in Portland, how many people bike commute. It's very different than any other city. And it's social. If you start doing it and you get excited about it and people see that it's changing your life, people see that there's a reward that you're getting out of it, they're more likely to want to do it as well. So looking at individual change, here's some of the surveyed responses from people who have done our discussion courses, the changes that they've reported in their own lives. So not only do they 80% feel a greater sense of personal obligation for solving environmental challenges, 72% takes more seriously the challenges of declining ecosystems, and 87% feels their small group was helpful in creating change, but they're actually making real change in their own lives. 79% are buying more local and organic produce, 73% make reductions in household energy, and 73% make reductions in water consumption. 60% more frequently volunteer for environmental causes, and 60% more frequently make alternative transportation choices. That's pretty astounding. Northwest Earth Institute has reached 150,000 people here in North America, in the US and Canada. So that's a pretty significant amount of people who are changing their own lifestyles as a result of doing these discussion courses. But it doesn't just stop there. People are also coming together with their own individual actions and then creating groups who can take bigger action and have bigger change. So Vestas, these are just 3 examples of a whole bunch of stories, but Vestas is an international wind company, wind energy company. They make wind turbines, and they have a Portland office. 12 of their employees 2 years ago did our Sustainable Systems at Work discussion course. And they said, oh, wow, this is really great. We do sustainable energy. This is what our whole business is based upon the idea of sustainability. But in going through this course, they found all these different ways in which they could improve their own operations to make them more sustainable. They decided to pick one thing and change it. And the one thing that they did change was when they ship out these wind turbines to different parts of the country to put them up to generate wind energy, they are covered with these really nice weatherproof tarps, huge tarps. And the way that they were designed originally was that the tarp had to be cut off to be able to put up the turbine. So each time a turbine was put up to generate wind energy, or energy from wind, the big tarp was landfilled. It was just thrown away. Doesn't seem very sustainable, right? So they transformed their assumptions about how that could be done, and they actually redesigned the tarp so that it could be zipped off and reused. So now there are hundreds and hundreds of yards of really nice tarps that are being reused and not landfilled because 12 employees at an international company decided they want to make change. And this bag right here is actually from some of the ones that weren't able to be reused. They made weatherproof, really nice weatherproof bags for their employees to remind them of their sustainability commitment. Another example of individual action that went to collective action is Friends of North Creek Forest up in Bethel, Washington. They actually watched An Inconvenient Truth in 2007. There was a group of community members who did that, and they decided they wanted to take action in their own lives. So they started doing Northwest Earth Institute discussion courses. They learned about a sense of place, they learned about voluntary simplicity, and then they decided they wanted to do something in their own community. Now Bethel is right next to a 64-acre forest, and development of the city was encroaching on this forest. So these folks, about 8 of them, got together and petitioned the city to see if they could write grants for the city to find a way to preserve the forest as a learning lab for all of the people in the city, for the elementary school students and high school students, and have a wildlife area for people to be able to go in and appreciate nature and understand ecosystems. The city said they could do that, and so far they've been successful in preserving 41 acres of the 64 acres there. And then just an example of students at PSU, there's a senior capstone called Sustainability Dialogue in Prisons, and the students do a voluntary simplicity course together as a group in their own classroom, and then they take what they've learned and they go into prisons and talk with actually I think it's at Coffee Creek, so they talk with the women at the prison there, and they actually work together to develop a discussion course on sustainability topics. These are just 3 examples of hundreds of examples just from the Northwest Earth Institute. Obviously, there's so much more happening out there. These are just the people that we're connected with. As Dr. Brown mentioned before, Kim Smith is the person who's coordinating the Regional Center of Expertise for the United Nations here in Portland. She uses the discussion courses from the Northwest Earth Institute in her environmental sociology class. She also does the Eco Challenge. There's so many people who are using these programs in a way that can inspire individuals to take action so that then they can together figure out how to create greater change. It's important to know where to start. It's important to have a stepping stone. It's important to be able to say, I've learned something and I can do something in my own life today or this week or this month to be able to make change. If a person learns about all of the crises that we're currently facing and doesn't feel that, they're never going to get to the place where they can actually be an activist or they can actually be an educator to somebody else. They'll wallow in apathy. They'll feel like they have nothing that they can do to make a difference. But taking a first step, whether that's changing a light bulb or having a discussion group or taking a class to learn more, lets them feel empowered to make further change and to work together with other individuals to make collective change. And that's what the Northwest Earth Institute tries to do.
Poppy, come on up here. You've heard this lecture so far. Do you think that all the individuals out there in the world watching on television can actually change their lives by doing the things that Lacey has suggested? Yes, yes, they can. Poppy agrees. I'm glad you're with us on board. And now we want to have a discussion, Poppy, about your own home turf here, PCC. And we're very honored to have the speaker today, the president, retired Linda Gerber, president of the Sylvania campus, and the tremendous leader in sustainability for PCC over many, many years, discuss the PC sustainability here at PCC.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Poppy. It's always a pleasure to share a stage with the two of you.
Poppy,
Let's see, I think I have a clicker.
Yeah, here's the clicker.
And can you help,
here, let me get
can
you.
you help
Let
me,
get
Toby,
you.
get,
Yeah,
get into my
that.
PowerPoint?
Yes.
You know, several people, starting with Dr. Brown this morning and ending with Lacey just before me, talked about the power of individuals. And one of the things that I want to talk about, let's see.
Oh, you point.
Yes, okay. One of the things that I'm going to start my talk with is help you recall 2 individuals that really made a huge difference in the past, during times in which well, in this case, in both of these cases, it was the chemical industry, were promoting and disseminating mistruths about the consequences of certain chemicals that were being industrialized in this country. And in both of these cases, one single individual had the courage to buck the system, to do the research, and to communicate and act in order to, I don't think it's too difficult to comprehend that, in fact, that they did save the world, which is what Toby's talking about now. So, how many people remember Rachel Carson's?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. My daughter is a biology, or is an 8th grade science teacher and a biology major. And I was talking to her about Rachel Carson's just a couple of days ago, and she said, you know, I know the name, but I don't really know what she did. So just in case you don't, Rachel Carson's was a biologist, and she was studying the East Coast seabird life, and she noticed that there was a precipitous decline in the population of seabirds on the East Coast. And that led her to do research in an area that was not really her area of expertise. And so she switched her research to chemistry, and she discovered that DDT was in fact destroying the eggs of birds. And the more she learned about the ecology and the disruptive impact of pesticides, the more disturbed she got, and she started to communicate and to act on her findings. And of course, the response that she got from the industry and the media was very dismissive. She was called hysterical, she was called a liar, but eventually, as scientists do, they replicated her research and studies and found that what she had discovered was true. And she was a terrific writer and publicized her findings in a book called Silent Spring, and that became a very popular book and led to demands by the population of the United States, by our citizens, to do something about pesticides and regulating pesticides, and led directly to the regulation of pesticides being removed from the Department of Agriculture and moved into a newly created arm of the government called the Environmental Protection Agency. So what Rachel Carson's did for the world was to remind us that we are part of nature, and that anything that we do that disrupts nature is a war against ourselves. And the consequences of her publicizing Silent Spring have rolled down in very beneficial ways from the date in 1962 when that publication came out. Dr. F. Sherwood Rowland, a chemist, was recently noted. New Yorker magazine had an editorial about Dr. Rowland, and did say he's one of the few people who has saved the world. And Dr. Malino, of course, has been working on the ozone layer, but it was Dr. Rowlands in the early 70s who discovered that chlorofluorocarbons, which were used in refrigerants and aerosol cans and cleaning solvents and all kinds of things, were in fact disrupting the ozone layer. And I have to say, the response to his discovery was very similar to the response to Rachel Carson's. He was pretty much shunned by his fellow academics in the world of science. And the Aerosol News, which was the trade publication for the aerosol industry, actually claimed that he was a KGB agent and with the intent of destroying capitalism. But once again, scientists began to replicate his findings, and he was eventually awarded the Nobel Prize, so he was vindicated. Unfortunately, Rachel Carson's died from breast cancer not too long after Silent Spring was published. And, you know, we all have our suspicions that maybe breast cancer is a result of the contact that we have with chemicals that are not exactly natural to our environment. Well, Portland Community College believes that institutions of higher education are responsible for not only creating new knowledge, but also for communicating it and teaching it to our students. And one of the best ways that we can do that is by modeling good citizenship. We do have a climate action plan that is actually has the same goals, I think, as the city of Portland's. You're going to hear about those soon, but Dr. Brown discussed this briefly. Based on our 2006 levels of greenhouse gas emissions, we intended to reduce our emissions 10% by 2012, 40% by 2030, and 80% by 2050. So how are we doing? Pretty darn well. We have, if you look at the full-time student equivalency, in other words, the number of students that we have in the college, we have reduced our metric ton of CO2s by 38%. If you look at our square footage, we have reduced by 13%. So we are on course if you look at those numbers. We are not on course if you look at just the gross production. And we've had this incredible increase in population of students and an incredible increase of square footage. So we really need to look at all three to analyze how well we're doing. When we talk about greenhouse gas emissions here at Portland Community College, we talk about three different kinds of emissions. And the first is called Scope 1 emissions, and it includes natural gas and district fleet, and refrigerants and stationary fuels. And we have been successful in reducing those emissions by over 50% since 2006. And those are emissions that we have quite a bit of control over, and can use technology and behavior change, et cetera, to attack the problem. Wait a minute, let's keep going here. Why am I stuck?
You might have to point it over here.
There we go. Some of the, just a few, I mean, we've done a number of things, but a few of the things that we've done is we have installed new boilers. This whole campus is heated by hot water. And so we had an old, very inefficient boiler that we converted to sequential boilers. And just that change alone, one thing, reduced our entire district emissions of Scope 1 emissions by 52%. And we also have a swimming pool on this campus that gobbled up a lot of energy in producing the heat needed to keep the water warm for swimmers. And we have employed a lot of strategies, including fuel cell and some technology to reuse the heat that is emitted into the air from the pool. That's all now recaptured and reused to reheat the water. So those are just two of the changes that we've made. There's a picture of our old boiler on the left, and these are really tiny little boiler things. They are not in proportion there. And here's some of the technology from the swimming pool. I would invite anybody who wants to come and have a tour to just, well, call Toby, I guess, because I'm retired. But it's fascinating and been very effective. Our Scope 2 emissions are purchased electricity. And of course, we purchase some of our electricity from Boardman, so it's very hard to control, but we have been successful in reducing those emissions. This is the gross emissions by 0.6% since 2006. And then we have just a little bit about how we did that. We have retrofitted all of our lighting to LED lighting, and are now using occupancy sensors throughout the district. And we have installed solar. We have a ground array at Rock Creek, And we have new construction at both Newburgh and Willow Creek centers that have PV on the roof. Our Newburgh Center is a net zero building, so it is, so far, in the last 6 months as we've been tracking it, been producing all the energy that it uses via its PV array. And there you have some familiar looking things, huh? Scope 3 emissions are supply chain and solid waste. And as Dr. Brown said, PCC is probably the only community college in the country that is tracking our supply chain emissions. These have increased since 2006 because we really have not implemented a strategy to reduce supply chain emissions. But just the fact that we figured out how to track them is a major accomplishment. We will be, that is in our newly revised climate action plan, that is one of the chief goals, is to, now that we know how to track the emissions from supply chain, we can attack the problem of purchasing less. That's the first strategy. And then when we do purchasing items that are less detrimental in terms of creating carbon emissions. So we have, as I said, developed the methodology for tracking supply chain emissions. We've also increased our transportation. We have college shuttles that run around the district and take students from one campus to another so that they do not have to drive cars. We have low emission buses that we're using. We've installed electric hand dryers that's really saving, I think, 70 tons of paper towels every year. And we have been invited to join the Founders Circle. It's a national sustainability purchasing leadership council that is not just educational, includes industry, big industry players, and government entities to work on this supply chain issue at the national level. In terms of teaching students, we have a very, very active group of faculty here that are dedicated to making sure that students leave this college with enough information to make educated decisions about what they hear regarding climate change and to act on what they learn regarding climate change. So far we have our green, all of our courses have outcomes. And for those courses that have green outcomes, they have now been identified and they're being flagged or will be flagged in the college schedule so students can find courses. And trust me, our students, as I think students across the country, are very interested in learning about sustainability. We have initiated a Greens Sustainability Focus Award so that students can actually get an academic award for taking a number of courses related to sustainability. We have received a grant from the National Science Foundation, and for a number of years now we've been teaching high school, college, and even university teachers around the region how to integrate sustainability curriculum into their courses. And that's really focusing on career and technical education courses. And then we have launched here at PCC a model for integrating sustainability curriculum into our general education courses, our transfer courses. This is a list of all of the things that organizationally we have done in order to be as successful as we are in the area of sustainability. I think this is going to be posted, so I'm not going to go through each one of these kind of I guess I would call it benchmark phases that we've had. But I would want to point out that from my point of view, the most important thing that has happened at this college related to sustainability is when our board of directors developed and adopted a policy on sustainability. And it's the B707 policy. And basically it says that Portland Community College will be a leader in sustainability and will model good practices in sustainability. And from that policy change at the board level, all else has flowed. The board is our boss, and so we pay attention. So PCC celebrates Earth Day every day. This is just one day out of the 360 odd days that we have. And yes, we can do it. Do we have naysayers? Yes. Do we have people who deny this is a problem? Yes. But the majority of faculty, staff, and students at PCC recognize it for the problem it is and are acting on it.
Linda, let me ask you one question. I know that the governor has designated our campus as a model campus for the future in a program called Net Zero.
Yes.
And I know we're making progress towards that. What is that goal?
Well, the goal is to create by 2030 a net zero campus for this campus. And the reason that it's important, and I think the reason the governor has selected it as an important goal, and this was an interesting fact for me to discover, between 1960 and 1974, there was a community college built in the United States, one every 2 weeks. So PCC's Sylvania campus was built during an era when we didn't think about sustainability. We thought about building the cheapest building we could so that we could teach the most students possible. So here we are, 50 years later, 40 years later, and we have a very large facility using an enormous amount of energy that is not in any way sustainable. I mean, there was nothing about this campus. And so the idea was, if we could take this very typical campus and move it to a net zero where we're not using any energy other than the energy that we produce, it would be a model for the country and for all of those hundreds of community colleges that were built. We are on our way. And the first phase is to reduce as much as possible the energy that we consume. The second phase will be to create as much energy as we need then to fill the gap, the delta.
Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you.
Poppy, do you think that we can make your habitat right here in the forest of Mountain Park, do you think we can make it net zero by 2030? Yes, we can. Thank you, Linda. And now we're moving out to a little bit larger territory in the state of Oregon, the city of Portland. I'd like to thank citizensclimatelobby.org for coming out today in our audience and supporting us, and also OregonClimate.org, two local organizations. Along with those organizations' websites, please do go to the website and download this PowerPoint, all these PowerPoints, and explore all of the links that are presented in this discussion, so that you can see what we've been talking about firsthand, and we can we're today fortunate to have our next speaker, Michael Armstrong, from the City of Portland, a senior manager in sustainability, who has been an integral part of the planning and the progress that the City of Portland has made to become one of the prime examples of a city on sustainability in the country. So we're here to present Michael Armstrong.
Great, thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Toby, and I'm really honored to share the stage here this afternoon. And I want to pick up a little bit on the theme of transformation that Linda was just talking about, the transformation that's underway on this campus, Lacey spoke earlier about individual transformation. We are in the midst of a transformation of sorts at the city of Portland. And it's not new, but we've really only just begun. So I want to start just a little bit of rapid fire, there we go, okay. A little bit of rapid fire, kind of reminding myself and maybe all of us what it is that we love about Portland. Some of the views, where our water comes from, that's Bull Run there. We've got our walkable neighborhoods, sidewalk cafes. We have beverages being served. We have farmers markets. We have activities in the park, people outside, people interacting with one another. We have all sorts of green infrastructure and support. There are all these fabulous things. Again, parks, activity, outdoors. These are really, really exceptional things. Green buildings, infrastructure. However, it hasn't always been this way. And I think sometimes in Portland, we're fortunate to presume that it's just like that. And well, Portland's different. And to those who've been around, they know it hasn't always been this way. But for some of us, and I include myself in this, I need to remind myself, Portland hasn't always been the way it is. So as recently as the 1970s, we had the brown cloud before Denver did. We were dirty before it was cool. We had 180 days of air quality violations a year. We invested a lot of money to make our streets wider, to make room for cars. Burnside in the 1930s, the street was widened, the facades of buildings were taken down, the buildings were made smaller, and then the facades reattached to make more room for cars. We don't have sidewalks where we need them. So this is a current map. So the red is sidewalks in Portland, and if you look to East Portland or parts of Southwest, we don't have nearly the sidewalks we need. We've got big challenges. We got a bike lane there on the left. We don't have a sidewalk. And where does that leave our families? You can see again in the right-hand side. So we've got big challenges on our hand. We've come a long way. We've got a long way to go. I think it's really, really useful to remind ourselves we've made these choices before, and we get to choose our future. And if we're serious about dealing with climate change, we need to choose a future that is a really successful, vibrant city that doesn't require carbon emissions to succeed. And so we got to look back and remind ourselves, Portland hasn't always been the way it is today, and in the future, it can't look the way it does now. And so we've got these wonderful stories of Waterfront Park. Used to be 6 lanes of traffic, now it's a park. We've got right in the very center of Portland, what in the 60s was a surface parking lot, and you'll recognize this if you look at some of the buildings around it. This surface parking lot was proposed to be a parking garage, 10 stories of parking right in the very center of the city, and people said there's got to be a better way, and the better way became Pioneer Courthouse Square. So that was proposed to be a 10-story parking garage, and people chose a different alternative. Those are the kinds of decisions we're making, if not every day, certainly every year now, and we need to be really deliberate about creating the kind of community we want that doesn't rely on fossil fuels. So you probably have noticed I work for the city's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, so we do big picture, long term. That's what we're about, but we do it with an eye to making a community that's for the benefit of the people who live in it and for the long-term health of everyone involved. And so this is the kind of thing we think about. A couple more examples. Stumptown is not just a brand of coffee, but it's what Portland looked like for many, many years, and that too has changed. This big picture planning that we embark on and that we try to do as a community effort is really enshrined in the Portland Plan. This was adopted by City Council in 2012. This, to me, really underscores we need to solve for carbon emissions, but we need to solve for carbon emissions in a way that create a really successful community. And so as you look at all these measures of success, one of them is reduced carbon emissions. And it's a particularly challenging one to get to, but if you look at the other things on that list, starting with equity and inclusion, resident satisfaction, educated youth, all the way on down, safer city, all of these things they're big, they're difficult, and we need to do them at the same time. And so the Portland Plan is where we're establishing a framework for addressing all of these things, and we tie them together. And one of the things that ties them together is people and creating a community that's creates opportunities for everyone in it. All right, so I brought along one little prop here. And if you laugh at this, you're simply betraying your age. But I have in my little hand, I hear some laughter. I hear some people betraying their age. I have in my hand these 5 1/4-inch floppy diskettes that contain Portland's first climate action plan from 1993, or at least the data that went into it. And it's both, to me, it's a reminder of how much things have changed. And it's really gratifying that in Portland, we have this fantastic legacy, these building blocks, foundations that our work is now hopefully improving upon, but certainly building upon. It's really striking to go back and read that 1993 plan because, number one, the science was pretty clear then. Number two, the solutions that are in the 93 plan are the same ones that are priorities today because we know what they are. These are not grand mysteries. Technology is helping, it's getting better and better, but it's really clear what we need to do. So as we look back at the history of climate planning in Portland, it's both, I'm so grateful that we have this 20-year head start. It's a little shocking that we've done some really good work, we have a really long way to go, and we know exactly what it is we need to do. So this little bit goes back to the opening slides, all the things we love about Portland. So much and so many good things have already happened. Reductions in household energy. Vehicle miles traveled are going down per person. Gasoline sales are going way down. It's really bad for our transportation revenue. It's really good for quality of life and carbon emissions. You can go on down the list. All of these things have happened over the last 20-odd years. You put all that together in terms of carbon emissions, and you see, you get a graph that's beginning to be pretty encouraging. Total carbon emissions in Multnomah County have declined a little more than 11% since 1990, and that's despite population growth of about 30%. So we've got 30% more people, we've got about 15% more jobs, and yet carbon emissions have gone down. So that's encouraging. And what's also encouraging about this, you get to see the gap open between emissions locally and emissions nationally. That's good. I think that's deserved. I think Portland has started moving on these things earlier than other parts of the country. But the fact that the national line is beginning to bend as well is absolutely essential. We need to see the national trend and the global trend come the same direction. So we've got a good story to tell, but we have a long way to go. And the long way to go is really illustrated by the same 80% goal that we share with Portland Community College. So 80% reduction by 2050, 40% by 2030, and the sooner the better. And so you can see that at a very rough level to the naked eye, we're not that far behind schedule, but we are behind schedule, and we've got a really long way to go. And we really need to keep our eye on that successful community in 2050 that's a place we actually want to live in. So I want to touch very briefly just on a couple of illustrations of things that are underway now, and then I want to turn the stage over here. So this is the current climate action plan for the city of Portland. We are in the process right now of updating this, so there will be a 2014 version that comes to City Council, the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners later this year. We need to continually figure out where we're going next with this. The long-term goals are clear, the near-term actions need to be refreshed. I said earlier how important it is to us that the carbon goals be linked with a variety of other community goals, and that it really is fundamental. We need to make sure we're doing this in ways that make a fairer community, that give us jobs, that help carry out our watershed management plan, help achieve all these other goals. And that's really important if we're successful. So the plan is broken down into these 8 areas. I'm just going to touch on a couple of examples. One of them is around urban form and mobility, something the city has a pretty strong say in terms of the shape of the community, how our transportation systems intersect. Our goal really is to get walkable neighborhoods and to connect those neighborhoods with good transportation options. That's transit, it's bicycles, we'll see what it is over time, but those 2 things for sure. But it only works if the neighborhoods themselves are walkable. And so a lot of our effort is around shaping walkable neighborhoods. A couple slides on bicycling. I think it was Lacey who mentioned the impressive figures for the number of people who get around Portland by bike. This is a map back in 1990, so that's the city of Portland there. The black lines are the bicycle network that was in place in 1990, and then the shading is the percent of people getting to work by bicycle. So I'll bring it forward through time and watch for the spread of the little black lines, that's the bike network, and then the shading. So coming forward in 2000, lots more black lines and lots more shading. Bring it forward again, 2007, and I got one more, 2008, and obviously we've got to get updated numbers in there. It continues to grow, so we're both getting higher percentages close in, but it's beginning to spread. We need to continue investing in that network because that's what really makes it functional. This is percent commuting by bike comparing Portland to other cities, and to me this really underscores we are in the midst of a transformation. Things haven't always been this way. So Portland likes to think of itself as a bicycling city, but in 2000, we were no more of a biking city than Minneapolis, Seattle, or San Francisco. We were all at exactly the same level. So just in the last now 12, 13 years, things have really started to change. Where do they go from here? We'll see. Can we be like Amsterdam, Copenhagen? We need a whole different scale on our y-axis there. So those numbers are still pretty small. You know, this is high praise on a low scale. So we do have our work cut out for us, but we also have something pretty good to build on. This dramatizes that distinction that Portland enjoys. This is cities across the bottom, US cities, and the point change in percent bicycling to work from 2000 to 2009. Portland is the big column at the far left. So we really are changing quickly and faster than other places, but almost all those lines are going in the right direction. We need other cities to do this too, and they are. You take the biking stuff, the walking stuff, population growth, we're starting to drive less. That's really, really good. It's good for public health, it's good for people's pocketbooks, it's good for air quality, it's good for carbon emissions. There's every reason to do it. All right, I talked about walkable neighborhoods. And you know, this notion that some of it is about being able to walk to things that you want to walk to. It's about access. Some of it is about habit. And we have gotten used to not walking as much. And that's something else, you know, we can all take into consideration. It's not so crazy to walk. I showed the map earlier of sidewalks, and we've got parts of the city that are not very walkable, and we need to address that. So this is a heat map. This predates WalkScore, which is a fantastic tool. This analysis is a little more refined about what makes a community walkable, because it's both access to things you want to walk to. It's not just coffee and beer, but a lot of it's coffee and beer. It's also, are there sidewalks? Do the streets connect? How steep is it? And is there a highway between you and where you need to get to? You got to mash all those things together to get a sense for how walkable something is, an area is. And then it also reveals what you need if you want to have it more walkable. So that's what we're working on. Okay, one other example here. Those of you who live in the city of Portland in single-family houses may recall that your garbage used to be picked up every week, and now it's picked up every other week. But you can put food scraps and anything else that'll compost into your green bin, which we pick up every week. So big change when this went into effect in 2011. It's been really successful. So we've got a 37% reduction in garbage immediately. We got a threefold increase in the amount of composting, and recycling has stayed about the same. I think at this point there's a small increase, but it's about the same. So we made these changes. Solid waste rates went down last year. We will release them shortly for this year, take them to City Council. If you want to know, you should come look, but it's pretty good news again. So this program is really delivering results. It was a big transition for a lot of people. It's not easy for everyone. We think it's really working well. So an illustration of the scale of change that we need and how quickly things can change. Okay, last thing, and this will echo some of the work that PCC is doing. You know, we're also a big public agency. We run a lot of stuff. We've got big opportunities ourselves. And so that's everything from swapping out the traffic signals. Every traffic signal in Portland has been an LED bulb for more than 10 years now. We're now in the process of working on all of the street lights in town. 56,000 or so will be converted to LEDs. It'll be the biggest energy efficiency project the city has ever done. About 10% of our carbon emissions, just with that one project, it pays for itself. It's the kind of thing we certainly need to be doing. It's the kind of opportunities that a lot of big organizations have. A couple other examples, and this is the LED street light project, a really big project. All of those kind of ghoulish, garish yellow lights that we have at night, they'll be replaced with something that's a lot closer to moonlight. Think of it as moonlight. It's nice light, and it's coming to you in Portland. All right, so I want to conclude with, this has got to be about people. We need to solve for climate change in ways that create a better place for people to live. I think cities have a lot of opportunities to do that. We're really focused on doing that in Portland. We cannot do it alone. This comes back to, this takes all of us. It's in our interest. We're the ones who can make it happen. So we really look forward to working with all of you, with the others today, on this going forward. So thank you very much.
Portland is known for our beer, music, and coffee, but I think more importantly, Portland is known nationwide for being one of the greenest cities in the country. Poppy, can we make Portland greener? Yes, we can. And now we want to move on to the regional and national perspective with one of our greatest citizens in the state, former Secretary of State Bill Bradbury, who's now a member of the Northwest Energy Planning Council. Bill has for years been the chief spokesman for climate change and sustainability in the state of Oregon. He was the first, I might be robbing his speech, but he was one of the first trainees by Al Gore, and he's given what now, almost 400 and something lectures on climate change throughout the state. So we're very pleased to have from Bandon, Oregon, Portland's own Secretary Bill Bradbury.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I want to recognize the remarkable leadership that this campus and Toby have provided on making sure that people understand what's going on with the climate, because that's a really critical issue. I wanted to just talk briefly about the whole situation with climate change and where we find ourselves, because clearly we're having incredible events like Hurricane Sandy, late October of 2012. Incredible events like, I mean, this was a super hurricane, and we've had lots of hurricanes, and clearly the fact that the climate is changing and it's getting warmer and more water's getting absorbed, evaporating from the ocean into the atmosphere is leading to these incredible superstorms like Hurricane Sandy that just battered the East Coast, and really a lot of people suffered because of that hurricane. Recently, we had a typhoon, Typhoon Haiyan, which hit the Philippines incredibly hard. And we've had typhoons for a long, long time. But the fact is, this was really what would be described as a supercharged typhoon because of the changes we're having in the climate. So all of us are reeling under the impact of these kind of events. And the reality is that most people, not everybody, but most people now accept that the climate is changing and it is having some real direct relationship to the extreme weather events we're seeing around the country. And I think all of us know that we need to make changes, in this country and this world need to make changes in order to deal with the changes in the climate. We can't just bury our heads in the sand. It's not going to cut it to just pretend things aren't changing. Clearly, we have to change, and we all know that we really have a whole lot of solutions at hand to solve this problem with too much carbon in the atmosphere. Start with how we produce our energy. I think it's important to remember that in the United States of America, 75% of the electricity is produced by coal. I think it's really important to remember that. That's not true in the Northwest. We produce, 60% of our energy from hydroelectric. The salmon have a problem with that, but we produce 60% of our energy with hydroelectric, and we still produce 40% of our energy from fossil fuels, coal and natural gas and the like. We're seeing an incredible development of other technologies like wind technology. This is really the world's largest wind turbine that was installed in 2012 in Denmark. Provides energy for, I'm going to say, over 10,000 homes. Then there's this array of wind farms out in the English Channel, produce energy for 470,000 homes. Then you've got those kind of things going on in Turkey, and you have India developing wind energy. They're basically working to quadruple their renewable energy development by 2022. And China is fascinating because they are the world leader in wind energy. They are also, because of their great need to develop their economy in a significant manner, they're also the largest burner of really dirty, soft coal in the world. So on one hand, they're a huge developer of renewable energy resources like wind, and on the other hand, they are an incredible greenhouse gas polluter because their economy demands so much energy. And I think people here in this state are aware of this incredible development that's taken place in the last 15 years in the Columbia Gorge and eastern Oregon with wind development. And it's really, it's pretty remarkable, and it's a great source, of energy. And there's another exciting thing going on, which is how do we get more energy from the sun? And this is a site in the Mojave Desert in California where you have all these solar reflectors, mirrors, that are all eventually going to be aimed at that black tower. And that facility, it's called Ivanpah, will in fact, because it'll boil water in the black tower, that boiling water then produces electricity, it'll produce energy for 140,000 homes in America. And it'll do it all from the sun. So it's an incredible operation. And I love it that the Vatican is, in fact, basically they've done a whole series of installations to make sure that they are, in fact, getting their energy from the sun and the wind and no longer on the coal grid, so to speak. And the solar industry in this state is a big deal. In March of 2007, a large solar company called SolarWorld, located here in Oregon, and they moved into an old high-tech plant in Hillsboro, and they employ somewhere in the range of 1,200 to 1,400 people at very good family wage jobs, producing solar panels and other kinds of solar devices. So the solar industry, that then spawns, having that major employer, SolarWorld there, then spawns all these spin-off firms that have located out in the Hillsboro area as well. So it's a great opportunity for all of us. Can you make it? There it goes. It went. So another opportunity for us in Oregon particularly comes from geothermal resources, hot water in the earth. And you can see from this map that Oregon is really in one of the Earth's hot zones that run around the Pacific Rim, and there are a couple others. But those are places where you're likely to get geothermal resources and put them to work. Now, the real beauty of geothermal, obviously, is that you can produce energy from geothermal, like they're doing in the background here, but you can also get a really nice warm soak. So it's kind of a double-edged energy resource that really serves both energy needs and people's needs. Now, the thing that excites me, the thing that makes me feel like we might actually be able to do this, is that we have seen the investment in renewable energy actually exceed the investments in fossil energy for the first time in this country in 2010. It was $157 billion invested in fossil fuel energy in 2010 and $187 billion invested in renewable energy. That gives you some real hope that we may in fact be able to get where we need to go. Another thing that I really think we need to be thinking about very, very seriously is putting a price on carbon. The fact is, we don't do that now. And the fact is, if you use price as a signal, you can get people to move in a different direction. And really, when we talk about putting a price on carbon, what we're really talking about is enacting a carbon tax. And obviously, carbon dioxide is the largest greenhouse gas that's going into our atmosphere. And it's real clear that through a carbon tax, you can really reduce the amount of carbon entering the atmosphere. And that's the goal, is to drive a meaningful reduction in the pollution of our atmosphere with carbon dioxide. And it also serves the purpose of generating revenue, which can be refunded to people who are paying it. It can be used to support education. It can be used to support human resources, all those things. But it also drives a very sound policy, which is let's find a way to reduce carbon pollution. And sometimes I'm always reminded that when we talk about things like putting a price on carbon, it seems pretty daunting, especially given the incredible influence of the fossil fuel industry. I'm always reminded of Nelson Mandela's quote, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And I think that's the spirit we have to have as we move forward to see that we move into this new era. I want to emphasize to everybody that obviously this is a huge global problem. There are national policies that are required, but there are also individual actions that each and every one of us must take. This is an older home here in Portland, and the areas that are red or bright yellow are the areas that are losing heat, i.e. losing energy. And we really need to do everything we can to make sure that our homes are as energy efficient as possible. And we need to make sure that we insulate our ceilings and all to make sure that the heat stays in the house. And there are a whole series of things that we can do to save energy. And I work with the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, and they've identified some very specific things that we can do to really save energy. The first one is TVs, using energy efficient TVs instead of energy hogs. Obviously, an old one that we're getting better at is water heating. Lighting is an incredible one. As we move into, as Mr. Armstrong was talking about in terms of LED streetlights, that gives us an incredible opportunity to produce a lot of power with a lot less energy. And then things like efficient shower heads are obviously part of it. Very exciting opportunity to save energy and not burn so many fossil fuels relates to electric vehicles, whether it be the Nissan Leaf or the new General Motors Volt. These are vehicles that are electric powered, not fossil fuel powered, and obviously can help us reduce our fossil fuel usage. I really want, this to me is a very interesting little slide, in that if you look at the incandescent bulb when Thomas Edison developed it, it was 1.4 lumens per watt. A lumen is a measure of how much light energy. 1.4 lumens per watt in Edison's day, and then you have the LED now that has 100 lumens per watt. So there's just this incredible opportunity to save energy and still get the light that we need. And the Power Council that I work for has really identified some real clear sources of energy efficiency that are really easy to pursue, whether it be home heating and cooling, or home water heating, or more efficient televisions, home consumer electronics, home lighting. All those are sources of real energy efficiency as we move forward. And the thing I would emphasize is that moving in this more efficient direction is good for the economy, because all of these companies that produce renewable energy or produce higher levels of energy efficiency are all part of the economy in Oregon and are all providing jobs to people that work here. And I just want to emphasize that this is a significant new jobs opportunity. Climate Solutions estimates by 2028 we will have new jobs in solar, wind, green building, bioenergy, with a total of 62,000 new jobs related to getting those kind of things going. So the real question is, can we do it? And Rosie the Riveter certainly made it clear that we can do it. And Martin Luther King, speaking about civil rights, clearly inspired the nation to move in a much more sound direction in terms of civil rights. And John F. Kennedy said, we're going to put a person on the moon in 10 years, and we did it in 9. So there's been this incredible we can do it attitude here in this country, and it is a problem we really can confront and take on. This is a beautiful, wonderful planet that we have, and I think we all know that we share this planet. And it's one that it's really, the fact is it's the only planet we'll ever have or hold or touch for our children and for their children. And this is my grandchild. This is Pippin, and this is my granddaughter, Cleo. And both Pippin and Cleo would really appreciate it if all of us would work together to keep this planet a wonderful, livable place that all of us can enjoy for our lives and for their lives.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Poppy, can we keep this planet safe for his grandchildren?
We can! Yes, we can!
Can Bill go on and be the leader in the state of Oregon in climate change education and give 500 presentations?
Yes,
he can. Well, thank you, Bill, for your wonderful presentation.
Okay.
And just keep seated there. We want to hear from our representative in Congress on, on a national perspective.
Great.
Representative Earl Blumenauer was not able to visit with us today, but he does have a message for us in this presentation. So let's listen to Representative Earl Blumenauer in his short video presentation.
Thank you for inviting me to join you today. I'm sorry that the congressional schedule does not allow me to attend your Earth Day conference in person, but I appreciate being able to share a few minutes of my thoughts with you. The conversations that you will have today and the work that lies ahead have never been more important. The evidence of climate change is all around us. Last year, the effects appeared all around the planet. From Cairo's first snowfall in more than a century to Russia's warmest December and the wildest U.S. tornado ever recorded, 2013 was marked by unusual weather extremes worldwide. Every continent, including Antarctica, saw weather records of some sort. Overall, 2013 was tied with 2007 as the 6th warmest year since global records began in 1850. 13 of the 14 warmest years ever recorded have been in this century. Carbon dioxide levels have risen to amounts never seen in human history, reaching atmospheric concentrations of 400 parts per million. Climatologists are slow to put 100% of the blame for these events on climate change, obviously. Yet many of last year's extreme weather events were consistent with what scientists expected as a result of human-induced global warming. And the same scientists are warning that we are not prepared for what lies ahead, not only in terms of the cost to human life, but the environment we will incur as a result of more frequent and intense weather events, but increases in global food prices, decreases in the availability of water, increases in health problems, and decreases in economic growth and poverty reduction. Despite the challenges, I see hope for the future. We can and we must take action to limit carbon releases into the atmosphere. Now, one of the best ways to do that is put a price on carbon. Last year, my colleagues in Congress and I unveiled a proposal for a carbon tax, which I have long supported. Recently, 24 of the nation's largest corporations, including 5 major oil companies, said they're planning their future growth on the expectation that there will be a price on carbon. Renewable energy development, conservation and investments in the smart grid to make our energy infrastructure more efficient are already happening, and happening in exciting ways. At the end of 2012, the United States had installed over 60,000 megawatts of wind energy. Think of it. That's enough to power the equivalent of 15 million homes with renewable power. And in the process, over 80,000 jobs have been created as a result. In Congress, I'm leading the effort to extend the production tax credit for renewable energy and repeal unnecessary subsidies for oil and gas. These are mature, very profitable industries which need no further help from the federal government. We must also look at how we prepare and mitigate for the effects of climate change and extreme weather events. How do we make our homes and communities more disaster resilient? All around us, we're seeing action in various cities, the community of faith, schools, businesses, all working to increase sustainability and reduce carbon footprints. And no place has that been more evident than the leadership that we've seen at Portland Community College. Your past work is exemplary. And I appreciate your convening today's summit and obviously look forward to working with you on all the challenges that lie ahead.
Well, we've heard from many speakers today. Lacey Cagle, Linda Gerber, Michael Armstrong, Bill Bradbury, And oh, we might have lost our clicker. And
It's just stuck on
oh,
me.
yeah, and Earl Blumenauer. Due to time constraints, we may have to skip over these questions for Bill. They would be wonderful to discuss, and I encourage you to go to this PowerPoint and look at the links at the bottom of the screen. For example, how do we attack gasoline without switching alternative fuels? The answers are on the links here with the example of California. How do we, why is the largest increase in carbon dioxide emissions in Oregon coming from the freight sector? And how do we mitigate this increase? New standards of truck emissions from the federal government, and how can we keep CO2 emissions from going up when we are projected to get a huge population increase from climate refugees, and the work that the United Nations Climate Refugee Planning Council is doing to accommodate refugees around the world as a result of climate change. In conclusion, what we need is not only to stop exponential growth in the energy sector and win the war on carbon, but we need an exponential growth in people acting on climate solutions. So we need involved people who are talking, communicating, educating, and acting. We need the 7 billion people in the world to act together, and then we can achieve this change. What we need is you. We need to get you involved in climate change so that we can find that solution and make the world totally sustainable by 2100. So I ask you now, can we talk about solutions?
Yes, we can.
Can we communicate about solutions?
Yes, we can.
Can we educate about the solutions for climate change?
Yes, we can.
Can we act on the solutions and create a sustainable world?
Yes, we can.
The solution is talking, communicating, educating, and acting. So on behalf of Jeremy, myself, Jeremy and Lacey and Linda and Bill and Michael and Earl and all the members here at Portland Community College on our green team, I want to thank you for the time spent, and I want to challenge you to act and help make this earth sustainable. Remember, every day is Earth Day. Thank you.